Namaste. Welcome to Sipping on Stories podcast. Now, this is where we welcome women healers and spiritual leaders from all around the world to come and share their journeys and their experiences. And of course, we do them over warm cups and deep thoughts. Now, many of you have been loving our podcast episodes. Thank you so much for showing your love. And for those who are new to this channel, welcome. Please like and subscribe so we can continue to share this love. Thank you. Hi everyone, Namaste. Welcome back to Sipping on Stories podcast. Today we're diving into a conversation that so many women, especially those navigating perimenopause, need to hear. My guest is Sara Southgate. She is a naturopath, a herbalist, and a coach who has spent over 2 decades helping women reclaim their energy, vitality, and joy, and of course without relying on medication. But Sara didn't start out in this field. In fact, her journey into natural healing began out of desperation after being diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome. And when conventional medicine couldn't provide answers, she discovered naturopathy, and it changed her life. Now she's on a mission to change the lives of countless other women, helping them take control of their health so that life and business becomes easier, more vibrant, and dare I say, even more fun. So, Sara, namaste. Welcome to the show.
Namaste.
Yeah, namaste. I'd love for you to start off by saying, introducing us to our listeners, saying where you're joining us from, and also tell us what cup of tea, or you've got a cup of coffee. What are you drinking, and your choice of beverage also.
Okay, it's so great to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm joining you from the very lovely Royal Leamington Spa in the Midlands in England, so kind of right in the middle, about as far from the sea as it's possible to be on an island. I am sipping on my first cup of jasmine green tea this morning in my very special green tea mug, because it's got to be the right mug for the right tea, right?
Love it. I think jasmine has these very relaxing and calming properties, I think. Yeah, very interesting. The fun fact is, I find, I never knew this, but in South India, where I come from, we women wear a lot of jasmine flowers on our hair, and especially on our hair, right? And I've noticed in a lot of weddings, especially in a lot of these Indian weddings, I see that a lot of women wear these jasmine on their hair as well, because it relieves stress. And that's when it's kind of used a lot during weddings, because brides are very stressed out. And I was like, that makes sense.
Yeah, wow. And you've taught me something. I'm a herbalist, and actually I didn't know that. So jasmine is not one of the herbs that I use in my dispensary, but I drink it every day because I love green tea, but jasmine green tea is very special.
Yeah.
Fragrant, isn't it? Lovely. I can imagine that would be helpful.
Yeah, so feminine and so relaxing. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sara, for joining. I thought we'll get started right into from, your burnout to breakthrough. So your journey, started with the dream of being a businesswoman, and only to be, completely derailed by chronic fatigue syndrome. Now, of course, I would love for you to kind of give us a little sneak peek, or just a high level on what was like to have a chronic fatigue syndrome, just for our listeners who might not have encountered this before or not heard of this syndrome before. Maybe take us through that a little bit. Yeah, please do.
Yeah. So chronic fatigue syndrome used to be called ME, so often people recognize it by that. It is a post-viral syndrome. So like long COVID now is a post-viral syndrome. It's in the same family of illnesses as that. But back then, so I was 21 when I was diagnosed, it was still really a diagnosis that many people didn't believe. So I was very lucky. I got a very fast diagnosis, but many people with chronic fatigue syndrome have to fight for years to get a diagnosis, and they're dismissed by their doctors and by society at large. So it used to be called yuppie flu in the 80s. So it really hits high achievers, go-getters, and then you get a virus which your body doesn't really ever recover from. and it gives you a lot of muscle pain, insomnia, fatigue is the biggest symptom. So I couldn't work. I scraped through my degree and I had to move back in with my parents. And I just thought, you know what, life is over because the doctor said you can have some antidepressants if you want, but I wasn't depressed. I mean, I wasn't very happy that I had no energy and I couldn't go out, but I wasn't depressed. There was a reason why I felt like that. So yeah, I felt really helpless and desperate, and then I found naturopathic medicine. That's one of my biggest blessings. One of my biggest blessings.
Yeah. Oh, that's it's very interesting how the universe kind of guides you and takes you to a path where you're meant to be
Yeah,
by kind of giving you, throwing a lot at you at the beginning where you need to figure it out. It's crazy. So
yeah.
looking back, so do you see this as a curse or a redirection? Of course, you look much more happier and you're enjoying what you do, but I'd love to hear
Yeah.
from you.
Yeah, it's definitely a redirection. And I think so it's really interesting. So I was born in Hong Kong, right? And obviously in Hong Kong, there's Chinese medicine. There's a lot of, knowledge. They work with the meridians, the invisible energies of the body, and all that kind of thing. And that was all around me, but I never noticed it. I never took notice of it. I mean, there's a really famous building in Hong Kong that's got a massive gap in the middle of it, so that the path of the dragon, the energy can fly through it and keep everybody healthy and wealthy.
Wow.
We just are taught to dismiss those kinds of things.
Mm.
I even went for some acupuncture. My boss took me, and the guy looked at my tongue and said, "You have hot and fiery joints." So that wasn't chronic fatigue, but I was like, "Oh my God, you know what's wrong with me? I haven't even told you." So it was really powerful, and I was exposed to that multiple times, but I didn't take notice until I
Mm.
got chronic fatigue. So I think the universe sometimes goes, "Stop, stop now," and that was my moment. I had no choice. I
Yeah,
had no
yeah,
choice.
exactly. It's just because you can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So
Yes.
I think my
Yeah.
next question is, you went from being skeptic to healer.
Yeah.
So you were highly skeptical of, Reiki when you first encountered it. So what was the moment that, of course, you were kind of battling through the chronic fatigue syndrome and you were like so desperate, but I know that you kind of, made that shift, but how was that kind of shift? When did you first realize, like, oh my God, Reiki is so helpful and I can work with it? So how
Yeah.
did you kind of embrace energy healing into your life?
So, well, when I was really desperate, I went to the local crystal shop on my high street and they had a notice there saying reflexology and Reiki. And I just went in and went, "Will it help me? I've got chronic fatigue syndrome." And they went, "Yeah, it will." So I had some reflexology and that helped. And then, we came to the end of that and I was like, "Will Reiki help me?" She said, "Yeah, it will." I went, "I'm going to book that then." And unbeknownst to me, I booked for a Reiki attunement, which is where you have your energy channels open so that you can give Reiki instead of having a Reiki treatment where somebody gives you Reiki.
Hmm.
Uh, so I booked this and it was like a whole day thing. And I turned up and it was just me and this lovely lady. And she started talking about energy. And I was like, what? I'd never heard of it before, ever. And she said, "Okay, we're going to do the attunement." And she was talking about all this stuff that I just was like, "Oh my goodness, what have I got myself into?" And she said, "Okay, we're going to do the attunement, and then we're going to go for lunch, and then we'll come back and do some Reiki." I was like, "Okay." So doing the achievement show, turn down the lights in case you get a vision or any angels appear. And I was like, what? She's mental. Anyway, so she turned down the lights, she did the attunement, nothing happened. I didn't have a vision, I didn't feel anything. And I was just, oh my God. So I went for lunch and I thought, am I going to go back? And I thought, well, of course, I paid for it, so I'm going back. Anyway, so back we come. She lies down on a treatment couch. She says, switch your energy on, Sara, and then do a body scan of me. So you scan your hands about 2 inches above someone's body really slowly, along you go. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to go with this. So I did that and I got to her knees and I just felt this pulling sensation in my hands. I was like, what's happening with your knees? She said, "Oh, I've got arthritis." I was like, okay, that's really interesting. So I could feel it. And then I got to her pelvis and I said, "What's this?" And she said, "I'm having a really painful period." I was like, okay. So for me, that moment of change is when I feel the Reiki in my hands. then it's something tangible to me. I can feel energy.
Mm.
So that's when it changed, and it Reiki changed the way I understand how the world fits together,
Oh, that's so
basically.
beautiful. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. You
yeah.
won't realize it until you feel it. And yeah, it's amazing. And I kind of I know what you mean too, because I took a Reiki class once, and this was with my mother, and the Reiki master was like, just hold your palms on her foot, on both the foot. And then I had no idea that at that moment I was not sure which foot of which knee my mom had issues with. I had totally forgotten about it. And I'm like, I can feel a lot of pulling in my left palm. And then my mom's like, oh, that's where I have issues with my knee. And I'm like, oh, it makes sense. And it's amazing how energy works.
Mm.
And what I also wanted to ask you in that, when you were describing the whole process is, do you feel any difference on, when you do Reiki on yourself versus getting Reiki done? Have you felt, what sort of difference have you felt? Or do you think one is better than the other?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, when I had chronic fatigue syndrome, I was so tired, and I also had insomnia. Real irony, right? You're so tired and you can't sleep, and giving myself Reiki just helped me fall asleep. So
Mm,
it was a game changer for my health. And Yeah, I suppose that I think the Reiki's the same. When you give someone Reiki, you're healing yourself as well as healing them. So because it
mm.
comes through you, so you get Reiki whichever way you do it, actually. And it's just a lovely experience.
Yeah. Well, thank you for clarifying that. Sometimes we do have, our listeners who are new to this. They're kind of getting into things and or spiritually awakening or exploring different healing modalities. And sometimes it's good to kind of just get into and ask a few questions that clarifies things. But yeah, thank you for sharing that, Sarah. Now, I think the other question I have is just kind of getting into the holistic healing part of it, and naturopathy is. So you unknowingly used many naturopathic principles in your own healing before you even realizing what they were. So what do you think is the biggest misconception people have about natural medicine?
I think hands down the biggest misconception is that it can't have a significant impact on your health. I think we wander around and everyone says, well, you should eat healthily because it's good for you. You should exercise, it's good for you. But until you have implemented, with guidance from a trained professional, the right diet for your situation and the right lifestyle techniques for your situation, you don't understand how powerful it can be. And I think that is because our Western medical model completely dismisses nutrition. It
Mm,
completely dismisses nutrition. One of my programs that I run for women in perimenopause is it's a 28-day program, and in that time, with just food, their symptoms of perimenopause reduce between 64 and 95% in 28 days, right? Not one of them expects that to happen. Not one of them, right? And it does consistently. So it's the right way of eating for your situation, for you, is so powerful. So powerful.
yeah, and then so many other kind of systems that exist, especially because I come from an Indian background, so I've been exposed to this a lot more. And I love to kind of incorporate natural herbs, or even food. And I believe that, it has healing properties, it can heal your body. So I completely agree. And we have this Ayurveda where it talks about different body types and what you should be eating for your body type. And I think that
Yeah.
is so important for people. I think you need to get to know your body. You need to get to know your
Mm.
body and what nutrition it requires so you can nourish it. And I always kind of fall back into the spices in my kitchen. So I have a tummy bug, and I'm just gonna go and make some fennel seed tea, or cumin seed tea with it, or fenugreek seed tea. So it's just those little things that you have available in your kitchen, in your spices, and it is and works like miracle. And if
Yeah.
you yeah, you have digestion issues, you've got, just a bit of bloating, and you can just kind of reach out to these spices and make a tea for yourself. So,
Yeah,
which is amazing. I
it is.
think,
And
yeah.
I think you touched on something really important there. The spices are the powerhouse of your health, right?
Mm.
And it's again unknown in England. So I don't know whether it's because, like, back in the day, and I don't know the history how it was in India, but here the wise women in the villages,
Mm.
14, 1500s, they were burnt as witches, right? They were passing down this knowledge. Okay,
Mm.
now I don't know, did that happen in India?
Yes, it
It
does.
did. Okay.
Yeah, and a lot of, like, my mom, for example, or even my grandmother have like really these secrets they've kept, and they kind of pass it down in the family chain, and
Yeah.
we kind of find out, you could use this because my grandmother, as from memory, we never kind of relied on Western medicine. You've got a flu, you've got fever. We never would pop, just Panadols and medication to cure yourself. It was just done so naturally at home.
Yeah.
It might take a day or two, but you are going to recover. And I think that's amazing. I think I really feel bad for the kind of, the time that we live in at the moment. Is so fast paced.
Yes.
There is no moment to think for women, especially. They're so stressed. And I
Mhm.
feel like these kind of amazing wisdom that is there is just hidden. And we
Yeah.
sometimes, we don't know how to access it, and they can't
Yeah.
access it. So I feel very sad sometimes, but I'm
Yeah. Me
but
too.
I'm
It,
very grateful for people like you, Sarah, that exist. So who
yeah.
are, carrying forward and helping women through this with, of course,
Yeah.
natural medicine. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's really interesting. So I work with quite a lot of Indian, Asian families, and I love that because usually there's a lot of cooking from scratch. Usually there's a lot of spices. Usually there is the understanding that's been passed down in their family that food is medicine. And so there's that whole education piece that's already there that we can then build on. Whereas, if you are kind of you don't have that background, you don't have that knowledge and understanding.
Mm.
And you're right, I feel sad. And just there's an advert in the UK for Lemsip, which is it's like a thing that you take when you have a cold. I'm sure it's probably in Australia. It's like paracetamol and caffeine, basically. And
Mm.
it's like, don't go to work, fight through. Lemsip will help you. And it's like, well, what about just resting? Maybe. Maybe you should just rest and have some ginger tea. That will work beautifully. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. As we're talking about natural medicine, I just like to share. So I was going through brain fog recently, and I every time I would wake up, I would have this brain fog, and I'm like, oh my God, not enough of, I would have like 2 cups of coffee, and it's not helping me. I need to get on to work. Um, I visited my parents, and they live here in Australia as well, but they are very much into gardening, and they grow their fruits and a lot of vegetables in their garden because the
Mm.
climate that they're in is quite tropical, so it helps them to grow a lot of food, and they have got so much knowledge. And I'm like, you guys need to just maybe record this or write it down somewhere so it's not like
Yeah.
lost. And I
Yeah.
started having, when I visited them for 2 weeks, I started having the source of leaf tea with,
I don't know that one.
yeah, it looks like a wild custard apple. So it's a
Okay.
fruit, yeah. And the leaves have anti-inflammatory properties, and
Mm.
so much more. And within 2 weeks, my brain fog was like next to nil. And I was like, what
Yeah.
happened? And
Yeah.
it's known to help you heal your gut as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
which was amazing, I thought. And I'm like, where was this knowledge kept? And it needs to go out. So we
Yeah.
started like sharing it across, in our family. And everyone started having source of leaf tea, and it became a
Yeah.
thing. And I just talk about it because I get so excited about these things. Um,
Well, but brain fog is a massive issue for women in
mm,
perimenopause, especially professional women in
yeah.
perimenopause and menopause. And what it is, there is definitely inflammation. So perimenopause is a long-term low-grade state of inflammation. And so brain fog is the expression of that inflammation in your brain and central nervous system. Okay, so part of what we do for perimenopause is eat in an anti-inflammatory way.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah. So we can compensate for it naturally. And then, we have herbs which help to do that,
Mm,
ginger, turmeric. Um, rosemary is specific for memory.
right.
Bacopa is another one, which is for brain processing. So there's lots that you can do to combat that brain fog. Because it can, as a professional woman, it can be quite scary actually to suddenly not be able to remember people's names, but to be in a meeting
Oh my God.
and, forget what you're talking about mid-sentence, with a load of men who
Oh,
perhaps
yeah.
don't recognize, what you're going through. So it's hard, and protecting brain health is a really important thing that we can all do. Yeah.
Yeah, oh my God, you just nailed it. Like, yeah, you just have like this freeze moment between conversations, and I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about menopause and perimenopause, Sarah, I thought it was a great segue to get into this topic. And menopause is a topic that many people shy away from. And even though it's so natural, it's a natural phase of life, and half the population goes through it. But so why do you think menopause is still so under discussed, and what shifts need to happen for it to be normalized in everyday conversations? So, how can women empower themselves with knowledge and support during this transition?
Yeah, I think, and it's such a big question, isn't it? First of all, there's much more discussion around menopause in the UK.
Mm,
Davina McCall wrote a book, and that was really helpful. But the only solution that was offered was HRT. And actually, what I think is really important is to give women the tools that they can use in their house through the food that they eat and the way that they live, so they can take control of that. And I think part of the reason it's not talked about is, because it's to do with women's things, and that is, women's reproductive parts. Mentioning having a period,
mm,
your vagina and vulva are involved in that process, and your womb, and many people are uncomfortable with that. And it's really interesting to think about, the the way we do that. I mean, years ago, it must be like probably 20 years ago, I was with some friends, some really good friends, me, a female friend, and both of our husbands, and another couple. And they said, "How are you doing?" And she said, "Oh, I'm having a really heavy period and I'm absolutely wiped out by it."
mm.
And I was actually shocked that she had said that in the company of male friends, right?
Right.
So this is 20 years ago, but I remember, oh, that's a really curious response, Sarah. It's true. Women have periods. We all know about it. Yeah, I know families where the girls are menstruating and they don't tell their dad. They just pretend it doesn't happen. And
Mm,
to me, that's shame. That is shame being sown right there. If you are not, it's perfectly normal function. So I think there's a lot of embarrassment on behalf of men and on behalf of women. It's deeply personal. Some of the symptoms of menopause is not just brain fog. Some women have really heavy menstrual flooding. It's a really difficult subject to bring up.
yeah.
Yeah. Like imagine having to thinking, oh my God, this is an issue in a meeting at my workplace. How am I gonna, make sure my meetings only last an hour or less
Mm,
because I need to deal with this? How do I communicate that? Do
yeah.
you know what I mean? It's tricky. It's tricky, and we need to talk about it more. We need to talk about it more.
Yeah, I cannot agree more. And as you said, I'm so kind of surprised because I thought it was only kind of existed where in my culture, where we cannot talk about having a period or even talk about uterus or having, talk about vaginal issues. And I'm like, but this is all natural. We have it. We need to
Yeah.
talk about it. There's nothing dirty about it. Like, I don't get it. And we have all lived in the womb once, and we've all been through it. I don't get it. So it's very interesting for me to kind of think about these things. And I have never been able to talk about these things with my father, or even my male sibling for
Yeah.
God knows how long. And we only now, and I'm like, you know what, I need to start talking about these things, because you need to just normalize it. And I have started doing it, and I've seen people get uncomfortable, and I'm like, that's fine.
Yeah,
I
that's fine.
guess it's
It's so important.
mm,
Yeah, you just froze for a moment. But so that's so important to start dropping things into conversations and being open with your family. But when you think back, so my childhood, I have an older brother. He had a willy. It was also called a penis. It was called, there's how many names are there for male genitalia, right? Me, there was no name for my parts. There
mm,
was no name. So it is, you think about the words available to us to talk about the female genitalia, there are hardly any. The men have loads,
mm.
absolutely loads. And the female ones tend to be more derogatory as well than, sorry, should I do that again?
Yeah, that's fine. Continue it. Yeah, all good.
Uh, yeah, thinking about the names we have for our genitals from childhood, there are hardly any to describe the vulva, the vagina. And there are loads for penises, willies, just countless names for male genital parts, but hardly any for women.
Yeah.
I think it also stems from there as well,
Mm, yeah.
why we don't talk about these things. And I know I've got two girls, they're at 17 and 19. Menopause is not on the syllabus at school.
Mm, yeah.
It's not
And
on the syllabus.
did you mention it was optional, or it's non-existent?
Oh, so I was talking about my children's education, but when we but one of the things that in medical school,
Mm.
in the UK currently, female health, menopause, and nutrition are all optional modules in year 5, and they are not examined.
Oh my.
So that is just insane, isn't it?
Yeah,
Um,
it
it's
is.
not regarded as important by the people who are our medical educators.
Mm.
Um, it really it's a really patriarchal world we live in. It's a patriarchal medical system. There's a famous teaching text that was used until the 1980s. It's called Feminine Forever, and it was written by a doctor, and it described women as sexless caricatures of their former selves and desiccated. That's how he referred to postmenopausal women.
Oh my God.
And yes, and it turned out that the doctor who wrote it was actually funded by HRT producing pharmaceutical companies.
Mm.
And that's a teaching text for our doctors. Do you know what I mean? Think about the trickle down we have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Oh God.
yeah,
It saddens me, because people with power, they know that it's it's going to get, you know, kind of being remembered forever. People are going to remember things, and people in power need to, I feel like they need to be more kind of missing my words here, but trying to get my words in my head.
yeah,
But I think more vigilant, or even more conscious on what they're putting out there, because they need to understand that they have these power where things are going to last in people's memory for generations, and that will be then considered the truth, but that's not the truth. And I feel it's the same thing with even mainstream media, because we tend to believe everything that's put out there. So I feel
yeah,
like people with power need to be more conscious about what's being put out there, as it
yeah,
kind of is absorbed by people as truth. um,
yeah,
and
100%.
yeah, and there is kind of this thing that I was reading about the power of marketing. So, for example, like Coca-Cola, or even Christmas. Christmas is never meant to be red and white,
Yeah,
right? It was always white
yeah,
in very ancient times. But Coca-Cola came up with these kind of marketing where they turned Santa into red and white. And now that's like Christmas. You will associate red and white as Christmas because of their
yeah.
marketing campaign. And I'm like, oh my God, look at the kind of effect it has had over generations where it can just make you believe that Christmas is associated with red and white. So I
Yeah.
think it has immense power in that. And I think people also these days, I'm very grateful. A lot of people are, I think, awakening, asking questions, which is great. And these things are also coming up to surface. So, thank you for kind of sharing that as well, Sarah. I think that was very important. And thank you so much for sharing that aspect of things. So it really saddens that people in power kind of, let out things that are maybe untrue or that kind of goes through and sits with generations. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, but
Yeah.
that's my kind of a little take on that.
Well, it is, but also I think that menopause is a time when you can take back your power.
Hmm.
Right. I feel like, again, this whole negative narrative that we've got going on, menopause is going to be awful. There are, 47 different symptoms of it. You're going to forget everything. You're going to be really old. You must stay young. That's another thing that women have, don't they? Women are not
Hmm.
allowed to age. Men can age, and they're silver foxes. Women, however, it's another matter entirely. But what about menopause being the time when you step into that power, that wisdom? Bring your life experience and your value, and you're free from child rearing,
Hmm.
and you have time to, do more spiritual things and support your community or do whatever you want to do
Yeah.
that is right for you. But,
Hmm.
again, that's one of the things that we have to fight against, really,
Hmm.
is that menopause is a wonderful time of strength for women that can, you can write your own next chapter, can't you?
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
need to go into it with our chins up and in, reclaiming our lives, our strength, our spirituality, our bodies, and being really proud of that.
No, yeah, I love that. I love that energy and just just owning it and flowing with it, I guess. And that kind of
Mm.
talks about the balance and boundaries that women need to put during that time. So from your, I would love for you to kind of share your journey, your experience, as a premenopausal business owner, mother, and healer. So how do you personally navigate through these ongoing challenges of, setting boundaries, saying no, and also prioritizing self-care?
Yeah. Well, there are the challenges that I share with every single woman on the planet, right?
Mm.
Um, and it's really interesting. I've just started going back to yoga because I know I need to slow down. I'm a business owner. I've always got a to-do list that is it's never it's never going to finish, isn't it? My to-do list. I need to slow down, take space for myself. Women need to rest. We need more rest than men, and especially in menopause when your body's always dealing with hormonal fluctuations, isn't it? Men's
Yeah.
hormones are just like, straight, but we are dealing with this, and so knowing actually what you need in order to be your best self when you can do that, and in order to do that, for me, it's saying no, I am not working on a Monday. um, and because I need the time. Also, looking at all the things we do and taking a new lens on it and thinking, okay, which of these things in my diary are my hell yes, I am looking forward to that. And which of them are actually, I know when I go and do that, I'm going to feel drained afterwards.
Mm.
So now it's a non-negotiable for me. If I feel drained after doing something, seeing somebody, going somewhere, then I don't do that anymore.
Mm.
I've given myself permission to not people please and not do
Mm.
what's expected of me, to do what is best for me and mine. And that boundary setting for me is, being a people pleaser. It's taken a lot of practice
Yeah.
saying no, Learning to say no and not then follow it up with some kind of explanation to remind myself no is a full sentence. It doesn't have to be rude,
Mm,
but it's just like, can I do that? No, I can't do that. Because I know that how I need to look after myself. And self-care is no longer in perimenopause. We discover that self-care, we can't afford not to do it. We
yeah.
can't get away with it anymore
Mm,
because our body is changing and it's changed, it's adjusting to this new transition, this new metabolism, and we need to allow space for that to happen.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I cannot agree more. And my only wish is that women listening to this, or even men, right, who would be your partners, or someone might be going through this. So if
Yeah.
you're listening to this, I guess take inspiration and be there for them. And women, take inspiration and look after your health at this point. I think it's not selfish to do so if you're going to set boundaries and say, no, that's not selfish. So
Mhm.
I guess, Sarah, would you say that, of course, along with setting boundaries and balancing out and prioritizing your self care and along with proper nutrition, um, you can really kind of reverse all the symptoms that you're facing or you're going through your perimenopausal phase. Would you
Yeah.
agree?
I mean, it's we can really make perimenopause manageable. So the women I work with often, well, there's a range, but many of them don't want to take HRT because they don't like taking medication. So for me, HRT isn't an option. I don't want to take medication. I don't want to be reliant on putting synthetic hormones in my body. So there's that section of women. There's the section of women who can't have HRT safely because they've had strokes or DVTs, or they've got a family history of breast cancer.
Mm,
um, so they can't have it. And then there are the women for who try HRT and actually they feel worse on it, so they don't want to take it. They're looking for another solution. And then there are women who do take HRT, but it's not doing everything that they want it to do.
mm,
Right. So that's where learning how to look after yourself and naturally, really, just it actually can massively reduce your symptoms. I'm not going to say it will make you 100% symptom free. So I get the odd hot flush, right?
mm,
That's why I'm wearing a jacket, so that if I have a hot flush, I can just take it off and that's all good. But in terms of symptoms, so I'm 2 years now post menopause. So I haven't had a period for 2 years, and I get the occasional hot flush, and I
mm,
take my jacket off. And then when I get cold, I put it back on. And for me, that's not enough of a reason to think about taking HRT.
mm.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
what I am doing through my diet and my lifestyle is I am protecting my bone density because I know how to do that, and that's really important. I
Yeah.
am protecting my heart health because I
Mm,
know how to eat to make that happen. Yeah. I
yeah.
am balancing my blood sugar because I'm managing my weight because I know how to do that naturally. It's having that knowledge of how to look after yourself for the rest of your life. Um, that's so important. And the seeds of your health in retirement. I'm 50, so I'm thinking retirement in 10, 15 years. The seeds of that health, then they are being sown right now,
Mm,
because those diseases, diabetes, heart disease, cholesterol, high blood pressure, those seeds are sown now. They take about a decade to start expressing medically. So what we are doing is really important,
mm.
not just for perimenopause and menopause right now, but for your health and your freedom in retirement.
Yeah.
Really important.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't agree more. Um, and there's one thing that just popped up in my head as we're talking through this is there are a lot of supplements out there that exist that claim to help women going through menopause. Um,
Yeah.
so, in your experience, what do you kind of feel about these supplements that exist out there?
What do I feel? I feel like I might have a hot flush because I've just talked about it. So isn't that good timing, right? I actually had my very first hot flush as I was running one of my menopause masterclasses on camera. It was really funny. It was prompted by stress. So my internet cut out, and I was like, oh my goodness, I've got 50 people in a masterclass. Internet went down, and then I was like running around because, what's happened to the internet? And then it came back. And as it came back, and I came into the Zoom room, saw all these faces, I just went, had a
Mm,
massive hot flush. And there you go. Cortisol, stress hormones, prompt hot flushes. That's one of the reasons why we help to lower cortisol and have an easy menopause transition. Um, not that you're stressing me out, but yeah, I just thought that was beautifully timed. Um, and now I've forgotten your question. What was your
yeah,
question?
it's just about these
Oh yeah,
supplements that exist out there, right?
yeah,
Because they claim to help women going through menopause, to help the menopausal symptoms. I
yeah,
know we touched upon this earlier, Sarah, like when we connected. So I would
yeah,
love for you to kind of share your views
yeah.
again. Yeah.
Yeah, it is, and I think it applies not just to women in menopause. It applies to everyone looking for natural solutions to your health, right? So what we've got, I mean, you just told me about a herb that I've never heard of for brain fog, right? There, and I can, that's my dispensary behind me. I've got 200 herbs in there, right? So there are lots of things that, there's so many solutions, and you go into a health food shop, and you know it can be overwhelming, the choice,
Mm,
right? And then you look at some of what's on the packets, and it's got multiple things in it.
mm,
And so my principle always is, it needs to be of the right therapeutic quality, right? So it needs to be harvested and stored, if it's a herb, in the way where it retains its therapeutic properties. It needs to have the right dose.
mm,
Yeah, that, oh, it's not going to work. And it needs to be made by a company who we know takes the care to do those things, right? So with a supplement, it's like an vitamin, it just comes straight out the other end,
mm.
right? Whole. I only use supplements from companies I know test their tablets to make sure they dissolve in your stomach acid. Because if they don't dissolve in your stomach acid, you're going to get nothing from it, right?
Yeah.
So it's part of it is industry knowledge, I suppose,
Mm,
knowing what's what, and using reputable companies with a reputable dose. And I suppose it's not really useful because you need the insider knowledge. So, what I would say to people who are looking for a solution, do check the companies out. Testimonials are always going to be there, aren't they? They're
mm,
always going to be there. So try it and see. It should have a tangible effect on you. Within 30 days. So I would say for any herbal medicine, I would never assess it before 3 or 4 weeks is up to see
sure.
what is the impact. But it should be tangible. So I often working with women, they'll bring like a carrier bag. Here are all my supplements, and they're taking like 17 different things,
Oh
and they're
my.
spending all this money, and they don't know what's doing what. Yeah, so it's easy to just add in another thing and add in another thing,
Yeah.
isn't it? So yeah, so it's doing it step by step, and assessing actually what is this doing for me,
Mm,
um, and really putting in place, really, before you take anything, let's get what you're eating right,
yeah.
because that's the fundamental that you always have control of.
Mm,
And when you can control that, it impacts your weight, it impacts your brain fog, your energy levels, anxiety, can have a huge impact.
yep. Yeah, absolutely. I think that was really wise suggestion, Sarah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think for today, that's all the time we have left. But I felt that this was such a powerful and impactful episode. And everyone watching this, I'm sure they're going to take away something from this today. So thank you so much for coming on Sipping on Stories podcast, Sarah. I was very, very grateful for you and your wise words today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. And is it okay to say where people can find me if they
Of
want to
course.
find out about what I do.
I'm going to also link your details in the description down below so people can reach
Awesome.
out if they have resonated and connected with you, but you're absolutely welcome to share.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so sarasouthgate.com is my website. I do lots of free stuff because as a naturopath, part of my role is as an educator. So it's really helping women understand how much they can help themselves. So there's lots of free resources on my website. Find me on Facebook and LinkedIn.
Amazing. Thank you, Sara. You have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too. It's lovely to speak with you.